Hey everyone, this is Quentin Figueroa with SlayerMint.com, and in this video I would like to talk to you about how every situation is a good situation and there are no bad situations. Now, at the heart of most self-help and wisdom teachings, we have this idea, the thought that we have power over ourselves. And what goes along with this is that we have the ability and the power to choose how we react to our environment around us. And so that's kind of what I want to go through and talk about in this video. So let's take a look at that. Now, when it comes to investing and business and this type of stuff, we kind of know the basics of it with, investing, let's say. You want to buy low and sell high, right? So if a stock, you're pretty sure it's going to go to like $100 or something. And right now it's at $10. It's like you want to buy it when it's at $10 and then you want to sell it when it's at $100, right? So you'd be buying it low and selling it high. You don't want to buy it when it's at $100 and then watch it go down and then sell it at $10, right? Then you'd be losing money. So you buy low and sell high, right? So that's kind of like a profitable thing to do. And a good investor now can make money in any market. So it doesn't matter whether stocks are going up or down or this type of thing, because a good investor knows like, okay, if the stock's going to go down, like I'll just do something where I can make money when it goes down. If the stock's going to go up, I'll make money when it goes up. And it's the same thing with the businessman. It's like, if the economy, everybody's saying the economy sucks right now, the economy's not good, the businessman's like, well, I'll find an opportunity. I'll find something good in this bad economy. And then if the economy's good, the businessman will just be like, okay, well, the economy's good. I'll make a business in a good economy. It's like, it doesn't matter what the environment is to a good investor or to a good businessman. They work with what they have and they turn it good, or they make it good, or they find the good. And that same principle, that same way that you can kind of take anything that's thrown at you as a good businessman and turn it into something favorable, that is kind of what I'm talking about with this subject, just in life in general. It doesn't have to be business, it's just life kind of works the same way. So we've all heard the saying that when life hands you lemons, make lemonade, right? And it's a good saying because it's basically talking about this same type of thing, right? If the situation you have isn't favorable or it's not good, you get something you don't want or you don't need, it's like, sure, the situation might suck, but how you respond to it and what you do with it, the choices that you make in response to the situation or event, that's what matters. And that's something that you do have power over, right? You don't have power over what's going to happen to you, what life throws at you for the most part, right? Things are going to happen. You find yourself in a tough situation, something you would call bad, there's not much you can do about that situation. However, how you respond to it, that's something you can entirely do. You can entirely determine what happens from that situation or event. And now, like, just if you take an event, whatever it might be, some type of situation somebody finds themselves in, you have two different people. These two different people are going to respond to the exact same event differently. And they're going to respond to it relative to kind of their perspective or their consciousness, right? The decisions people make relative to a event is determined by how they view it. How they view it is based on kind of like how they've evolved themselves and the decisions and choices they've made throughout their lives and kind of what they want to get out of that particular event. And I think the differences of the way people view events or handle situations, especially hard situations, that is something that we can use to kind of determine, maybe not necessarily the quality of them, but we can determine things about them. And if we look at a lot of the people that we might admire or respect, like athletes and leaders and people like this, you can see that the way they respond to events kind of coincides with this type of thing that I'm talking about. So let's take a look at this and kind of explore it a little bit. So there's this quote from Michael Jordan where he says, quote, "Always turn a negative situation into a positive situation," end quote. And yeah, that's a very good quote. I love that quote because he's saying exactly this. He's saying, if it's a negative situation, it's like, okay, yeah, that sucks or whatever, but just turn it into a positive situation. Work with it. change how you interpret it, change what you do with it, and don't let the event change. Don't let the event dictate kind of your life. Don't let the event or the situation determine what you're going to do. You determine what you're going to do, and you build from that. You create the good situation, even if it's not there immediately or that type of thing. You have the ability to choose and to change your reality, right? So that is this quote from Michael Jordan. And now there's another one here. This is from Ana Ivanovic, and she is a tennis player. Okay, she says, when you have tough times and when you learn you can't be perfect in every situation, it's hard to accept, because I still do expect that. But you just have to, because, it's not about the situation. It's how you deal with it. You always have a choice. End quote. And here's another similar one from Chris Pine. The only thing you sometimes have control over is perspective. You don't have control over your situation, but you have a choice about how you view it. End quote. Okay, and that's Chris Pine. Now, these kind of attitudes, this is the attitude of a winner. This is somebody who's happy with life, peaceful and joyful. It's like, of course, bad things are going to happen, things we're not happy about, but it's how you view it. It's the choice you have of how you grow from it or what you do with that, right? And that's exactly what they're talking about, right? We need to look past the bad, or look past what we might see as bad, and find a way to use it to our advantage or to grow from it, because we're not always going to have good situations just coming at us all day long, and a lot of things will be bad, but how we deal with that is what determines the character and the quality of what we are. And if we look at a lot of these people we admire them because of how they respond to these bad situations. We all go through crap and weird situations like that, but how we respond to them, that's what determines kind of where we end up and that type of thing. And we know this, and that's why we admire these kind of people and these kind of quotes when we hear them, because it makes sense. Now there's another quote from Eckhart Tolle. He says, quote, "To complain is always non-acceptance of what is. It invariably carries an unconscious negative charge. When you complain, you make yourself into a victim. When you speak out, you are in your power. So change the situation by taking action or by speaking out if necessary or possible. Leave the situation or accept it. All else is madness." End quote. And now that is from Eckhart Tolle. And now he's talking about how basically you're a victim only if you choose to be a victim, right? And I mean, we see it so much these days. I see it almost everywhere I go. People that think they're a victim, or they want to play the victim, right? People are always like somehow like, oh, I got unlucky here. I'm a victim, and that's what he's talking about. That's what this whole thing is kind of about. It's like everybody has bad situations and they could say that they're a victim. But if you're going to be a victim, that's only going to make you more dependent on somebody else. It's only going to make you more powerless. It's an illusion of a solution to what you think might be solving this problem. It's not going to solve it. It's only going to make it worse. It's only going to take power away from you. The whole point, it's not about trying to find fault in others or the environment. It's about changing from this victim mentality to a power mentality. It's about understanding that we create our own reality. We have power over ourselves, and the choices we make and how we respond to various situations and events, that's what determines our future. That's what determines our reality. And we have the choice 100% of the time to choose like what we want to do, how we want to respond to things. And if we're going to respond as a victim, or if we're going to, think that you're unlucky, then you're going to just continue to take power away from yourselves and probably give it to somebody else. So it's just not a very healthy attitude to have. And we know this. I mean, I could give you quote after quote of people we respect talking about this. And we respect them because they follow these kind of principles. They follow this kind of teaching, and it gets them where they want to be, right? When Michael Jordan's practicing for basketball, he's not sitting there like, oh, I didn't have like the best college, or I didn't have the best teacher or the best training, or I didn't have this or what this other guy had. He's like, no, I'm going to work with what I do have. And I'm going to take anything that's negative and turn it into a positive. I'm going to work with it, and anything that's bad, I'll just use it to strengthen me, and it's something to overcome. This is the attitude of a winner. This is the attitude of people growing and moving forward in life. It's not a victim mentality. It's the exact opposite. This is empowerment. This is true like self-help and wisdom. This is like the true purpose of kind of evolving your consciousness. And that's why I find it so important. And I mean, we know it's true. Even listening to this, I'm sure it makes sense. But what happens is when we get in our day-to-day activities, we forget it. And then we'll be faced with a hardship. And then all of a sudden, it's like we just kind of crumble up and we default back to kind of that victim mentality. We forget that we don't have to play by those rules. We have power over determining how we react to things, and we can grow from it. We just forget about that. And I think a kind of cool example of this that I like are kites, because kites, like, I'm not that big of a fan of wind. I've never really liked wind that much. And I think there's probably quite a few people that don't like wind. It's annoying. It kind of gets in the way of stuff, blows things over. It kind of ruins plans, that kind of stuff. But kites are cool because they take something that a lot of people might view as a negative, like wind, and it turns it into a positive. It's like, in order to use a kite, you have to have wind. So it's like, okay, crap, we have wind, but at least we can make the most of it and now freaking fly a kite. So kites are interesting in that way. It's like it makes the most of something bad. It turns it into a positive. Another example of this is with martial arts. Most martial arts teaches some form of using kind of your opponent's energy against them, right? So this is kind of like turning a bad situation into a positive situation. So like, say in martial arts, like your opponent, like they punch at you, right? That's bad, right? So they come at you with a punch, and that's a bad thing. But what you can do now, that punch, you can parry it, you block it, and then you can counter them with your own punch. So you're turning like a bad situation, their punch, into a good situation. It's like bad, but look, you were like now out of position. You weren't ready for it, and I was able to counter that and turn it into a good situation. So martial arts, a lot of martial arts kind of teaches this kind of flow and this kind of, it's like an exchange. It's like an energy exchange. And a big part of martial arts, I mean, sure, there's like the physical aspect and all that, but there's a big mental and attitude aspect that is very important. And I would argue in a lot of ways more important than the physical aspect. And it's like understanding your opponent, understanding the relationship between the two, and then understanding how to find kind of weaknesses or opportunities. And like, a big part of fighting is like if somebody's out of, like, it's finding the rhythm, but then breaking the rhythm, breaking the balance, catching people off guard, changing the norm, that kind of stuff. And that's this. It's like taking a negative thing and turning it positive. So I wanted to hit on that. Now, one sec. So it obviously, this right here is kind of like the surface level look at it. It does go deeper than this. This is just kind of like hitting at the immediate right now. But there is this kind of deeper thing that ties into this. And it has to do kind of more with the law of attraction and this type of stuff. So, what we put time and energy on, that's what we build, right? That's kind of the law of attraction is, I've talked about this before. What we put energy on, what we focus on, what we put time into, that is like a vortex that we're building. It's like a memory bank, and that's something that we're putting out into the universe, and that it is building upon and kind of creating around our reality. So like, for instance, with like a serial killer, they want to kill people. There's different reasons on why somebody might want to do that or whatnot, but there's been a lot of energy, a lot of inertia and momentum kind of building into this type of thing, right? So they're building this vortex of like hate, or of like wanting to kill people or get even, or they feel like they're a victim or something. They're building this giant vortex of like wanting to kill people. And by doing that, they're creating that reality, and they're growing it. They're putting time into it. And then eventually they, might go and do that. And it's like they executed on this like huge thing that they built up, this huge thing that they put a lot of time and effort into. It's like with like a young kid who wants to be a basketball player. He goes out, like maybe basketball is just something he just like, it's a huge dream of his. It's like huge desire. So his whole, like every second of his life is spent thinking about it, talking about it, doing it. He's just like your whole life is immersed in basketball, everything about basketball. And so you're putting your time and energy into it, right? And so you're building this basketball vortex. And consequently, things in your life are going to be related to that thing that you're putting energy on. So if you're a kid and you're like super into basketball, you're going to start bringing people into your life, bringing events and situations into your life that have to do with basketball. That is what is going to be happening as you put time and energy into something. I mean, we kind of know this, that like, that's what happens. That's why we study topics. That's why we have different professions. It's like what you put time and energy into, that's what you build, right? So that's what's going on. So then what we can get from this then is that our current situation, it doesn't necessarily have to do with, it's not just necessarily chance. The current situation we're in is something that we've been building for ourselves in the past, right? So in the past, we've been putting energy and thoughts and time into certain things. And those certain things are now manifesting in the present in the form of something which we may call good or bad. It just kind of depends how we view it. But likewise, what we currently invest our time and energy into is what's going to happen in our future. We're currently building our future right now by what we are doing, thinking about, and acting on, right? So our current situation is a result of past decisions, choices, and stuff that we've put our energy into, just as our future is going to be a result of our current energy, choices, and whatnot, right? So there's this kind of deeper part to it. Like, if a bad thing happens to us, it's not necessarily by chance. That is something that we have created previously and brought to ourselves, give or take. I mean, it's not like 100, but that is kind of how this energy thing works. For the most part, kind of where we end up and where we are is a result of past things. It's on our part. It's not always, but there's a big element to this, and this is kind of more of a spiritual element that I don't think a lot of people hit on as much, but I think it's possible, or it's very important to talk about, right? So you have this kind of like feedback loop where everything that we're currently doing is creating the future, and then that future that was created by previous stuff, it like builds on that, and then it just keeps kind of building and reiterating on itself, and we're kind of like creating this like loop for ourselves that we're in, and it's like we determine like where that goes or how we break it and this kind of stuff. Okay, so now along these lines then, somebody might say, like, I know this is like the first thing you say. So like I say that every situation is a good situation. There are no bad situations, right? Somebody's going to be like, okay, what about somebody getting tortured to death? That's not a bad situation. Are you stupid? Right? So of course you have like somebody who for like no reason, like a serial killer or whatever, somebody who's just crazy, or they might just go out, kidnap somebody, torture them. The person might be completely innocent. They might be like a very good person, done nothing really wrong in their lives, right? But then they just, get taken. They're tortured. Maybe it's even a child, right? They're tortured. It's like none of this makes sense. This person doing is just like super evil. Like, why is that happening? And then how is that not a bad situation, right? And that is kind of, right? So I kind of get that. So I think what we need to do here is broaden our perspective a little bit, right? Because I'm not just looking at it from like a single life perspective. And I know, again, a lot of people don't talk about this stuff, but there's more to it than just this one life. And when I talk about past energy coming into kind of the present, that energy doesn't have to just be from when you're younger. It could be from previous existences, previous consciousness of yourself building into this life. So it doesn't just have to be this one soul life. And if you look at it from that perspective, it might make, when you look at it from the single life perspective, it makes a little bit less sense, I think, and it might get kind of confusing. But when you broaden your perspective and you kind of take into account more I guess just more lives, more energy, and more consciousness on your part, you might see how some of the things we might view as bad or unjust or unfair might make more sense from a broader perspective, and there might be reasoning behind them, and there might be value to gain from that. And that's kind of basically what I kind of want to hit on there. So it's interesting because there's a very great example with this, and pretty much everyone knows this example because this is the example of Jesus being crucified in the Bible. And when this is happening, now again, I'm not like a religious person, but I think there's great value in religion, and the stories have great messages. So I want to kind of talk about this one, but it's interesting because when Jesus is getting like crucified, right? There's this part in the Bible in John chapter 19, verses 10 through 11, where he's talking, kind of builds up to it actually a little bit, but there's actually a part in the movie, The Passion of Christ, where I think it does this part kind of really interesting and really well. But basically Pontius Pilate, like the governing official ahead of, like who's ahead of this crucifixion thing, right? Who has the power to choose whether or not to crucify Jesus, whether or not to kill him. So he's talking to Jesus, right? And he says this. So it says, quote, "Do you refuse to speak to me?" Pilate said. "Don't you realize I have power either to free you or to crucify you?" Jesus answered, "You would have no power over me if it were not given to you from above. Therefore, the one who handed me over to you is guilty of a greater sin." End quote. Okay, so this right here is Jesus looking at this from a broader perspective, right? So Pontius Pilate's like, dude, he's like, say something. He's like, I have the power to choose whether or not you die. It's like, we can end this right now. You don't have to die. Let's, whatever. And Jesus is like, he's like, dude, you don't have any power over me. He's like, this is what's meant to happen. This is what I'm okay with this happening. I understand why this is happening, what's happening. And this is like from a higher consciousness, this is what I have created in the past for myself presently. And Jesus gets it at like a deeper, more spiritual level from a broader perspective. And he kind of sees it not just as physical, like, oh, I want to live. Like you have obviously this like ego physical part of yourself that wants to survive and wants to live. But Jesus, being not a freaking idiot, he sees it from the higher level. And he's like, this life isn't more important to me than my life is my consciousness and the evolution of my consciousness and experiences of my consciousness that are going to take that to the next level. He doesn't want to live physically. He wants to live spiritually. He wants to evolve his higher self, his consciousness. So he gets it. And that is kind of what he's saying here. He's like, you don't have power over me. He's beyond caring about physical, like petty things. He's even beyond like kind of death, right? He's like, he sees it from a higher perspective. And that's kind of what he's talking about there. And yeah, not everything may be like what we might call good or what we might call fair or what we might call just, but you need to look at it kind of from, I think, a broader perspective to kind of see how it might, from a higher level, kind of work together in a way that we might not be able to see from our kind of limited, more narrow view. Because it's about having power over your consciousness and not living in fear. And this is kind of what like forgiveness and loving other people is all about. And this is kind of what Jesus is doing. And I think, he says something, I don't know exactly what it is when he's on the cross, like how forgive them for they know not what they do when they're crucifying him, right? And he's saying that because he gets that these people are killing him because like they're mad that he's speaking like stuff that's like smart, he's speaking the truth, right? So they get mad about that. They want to kill him. That's what always happens when people have like a good message, because most people can't handle the truth. So it's like too much light at once. It's bright on them and it sucks. It hurts, shines a light on their life. They don't like it, so they want to kill him. But he gets it, all that. And he's like, forgive them for they don't know what they do, because he knows these people are at a certain consciousness, a certain level, and they're acting kind of to the best of their ability, or they're acting basically to how they would react at that level. And he's like, he gets that. That's what forgiveness is, knowing that people, when they do harm to you, they're doing it because that's like the best they know. That's kind of like how they react to things because they don't know any better. So he gets that like at a physical level, it's not that big of a deal. So that's kind of what love and forgiveness is all about, is kind of seeing it from a higher view. And that's what Jesus is doing there. Okay, so with that said, most of us, we're not going to face a terrible death. We're like, 99.99% of us are not going to go through that kind of crap. So most of us, what is a bad situation isn't that. And even if it was that, there's still ways to get value out of it and to handle it. But most of us, it's going to be, a terrible thing to us is somebody like might hurt our feelings, right? Or we might face like some type of hardship at work or, something like that. It's more like everyday, like smaller type stuff, right? So things didn't go our way, right? It's like, so what? That happens all the time to everyone, and deal with it. Don't play a victim and, tell yourself that you're unfortunate or unlucky and create this huge poor me vortex that's just going to build and get more of it and repeat itself. It's like, that's not a healthy way to live. You need to, like these quotes say, you need to take that situation, recognize it, and be like, you know what, I'm going to break this cycle and I'm going to respond differently to it. Even if it might not be something that I see as just or fair, I'm going to respond in a positive way to it. And I'm going to maintain my own sanity and my own happiness by viewing things in a positive light. It's like anybody can do that. It's just a choice. So yeah, we can't control others, but of course we can control how we respond to others. We can control these types of things, and we should. And if Jesus could handle that type of situation, people like Jesus could handle these rough situations. It's like, hopefully maybe we can handle these like minor little petty situations that we have, because it's really not that big of a deal. So in conclusion, I'd like to say that there are really no such thing as bad situations. There's only situations. And whether they're good or bad is how we interpret them. And we interpret them kind of relative to ourselves. And if you're like of a more victim mentality, you're going to interpret more things as bad. And if you have like an attitude of a winner or somebody who's not a victim, somebody who's empowered, you're not going to really see that much bad. You're going to see mostly good. Because if something bad happens to you, you're like, okay, this is something to learn from. This is something that'll strengthen me. And then if something good happens, you're like, okay, I can use this momentum and work with it. It's like, it doesn't matter what's thrown at you. It's like a martial arts fighter. It's like you throw bad at somebody. It's like, I'll just, dodge it. I'll just, take that momentum and throw you to the ground with it. It's like you work with the bad. And if it's good, well, then it's good. And it's like, you can work with that too. It's like, it doesn't really matter what's thrown at you. When you look at it at that point, everything is just a data point. And it's how you merge that into your current consciousness paradigm. It's how you take whatever this thing is and build upon it. It's not about trying to brand it a certain way and cut yourself off from it if you think it's bad or something. You work with everything and you figure out a way to merge it in, and you figure out a way to turn it into like a positive situation, and then how to direct it in your way, and to direct it into like kind of your free will and that type of stuff, right? And really, if something's bad, it's only bad because we haven't learned how to let it not have power over us. Like I was saying, if like a higher quality person, they're not going to see as much bad, because if like somebody like calling them names, that's not bad, because it's like, who cares? It's like, it doesn't have any power over me. It's irrelevant. It's not bad, but to like us, like a kid or something, if somebody calls them a name, they might cry, it might hurt their feelings. So the stuff we call bad, and this is important, this is a really important point. The stuff we call bad, it's almost always something that has power over us that we haven't learned how to overcome, that we haven't learned how to deal with and not let it affect us. Not let it affect us. And that's why we call it bad, because it's affecting us in a way that we don't like. But if we can flip the switch, make a choice to change that situation to where it doesn't affect us, it's no longer bad, right? We need to kind of be more indifferent to these types of things and not see it kind of this way. And it's interesting because, again, this is the basis of most self-help. Most self-help is about empowering yourself, becoming positive and enjoying life. It's like, why wouldn't you want to enjoy life? Why wouldn't you want to become empowered and understand things, right? This is what self-help is kind of all about. And we have 100% power over ourselves. It's just most of the time we choose not to exercise it. And there is value in the situations that we call bad. It's just most of us are too blind to see that. So we need to become more like the skilled investor or the skilled businessman, to no matter what life throws at us, we can turn it into something good, right? If it's a bad economy, a good businessman, they'll be fine in a bad economy. If it's a good economy, businessman's going to be fine. We need to be like that with life, right? Life throws us a bad economy. Life throws us a curveball, something bad. Doesn't matter. We'll be okay with it. Life throws us something good. We'll be okay with it. That's what I'm talking about. And that's what I mean when I say every situation is a good situation. There is no bad situation because we can take any situation and make it good. It's how we view it. So thank you very much for listening, everyone, and have a spectacular day.